only limit here is your imagination. You start in the center of the park. It's simple, safe. The further out you venture, the more intense the experience gets. How far you want to go is entirely up to you.
I mean, can you believe this place? So how do we get into the park?
After doing extensive research into stadiums and sports fields, I came to the realisation that stadiums are often referred to as parks. I first came to the stadiums through looking at ley lines and the Earth's magnetic grid. One of the things that's always stuck out to me on Google Earth are the parks. The local parks that always seem to surround hospital, churches or schools, always seem to be in a close proximity. Through my own awakenings and enlightenment, I also know that parks have played a significant part in awakening people or aiding enlightenment. People such as Tony Parsons had their enlightenment whilst walking across a park, and we all know the Buddha was enlightened while sitting under a tree. So this made me pay a little bit more closer attention to parks in general, and ask the question, what makes gardens and parks so special? And why are we attracted to them? Throughout history, gardens have always seemed to hold some importance. There have always been gardens. Mankind was born in the garden, the fabled Garden of Eden. Other gardens in ancient history, such as the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, one of the original wonders of the world. Parks are often referred to in various names. They go by gardens, reserves, enclosures. A park being a large public garden, and a garden is a planned space set for cultivating and engagement for all forms of nature, whereas an enclosure is an area surrounded by a barrier. The word paradise in Iranian is said to mean a park or enclosure. When we break down the word park, we see ark, P-ark, ark reminding me of Noah's Ark, a ship built to save 2 of every type of animal from the flood. Thinking about parks, don't they really do this? A park is built. The main components of a park would be wood, the trees, and they all contain animals. Now we have to take it up a ladder. We've got the local parks, then we've got nature reserves, national parks, we've got zoological parks, and the list goes on. All these different variety of parks. Now think on that a moment. An ark, a ship built to save 2 of every type of animal from the flood. And then if we look at the Ark of the Covenant, a wooden box containing stone tablets. Didn't give me much there. But when we look what the Ark did, the Ark served as a place that people could meet with God. And he hovered over the park. Going back to what I said earlier about people having enlightenments in park, doesn't this give value? If a park was an ark, which was a place where people could meet with God. There's a lot of references to parks and gardens within the Bible.
This is consistent with Walter Russell's ideas of a universal one, a single consciousness that first split itself into the 2 opposing electrical forces which govern all things. This can be seen as one of the cubes Walter spoke of. One half of the cube is positively charged, the other half negatively charged. It is in this cube that our realm would exist, with the surface plane of the Earth being parallel with the magnetic plane that divides the 2 equally opposed electrical forces. Essentially, We live inside a giant capacitor, where everything we know of acts as the dielectric, including ourselves.
Tony Parsons talks about how when he walked across a field one day, he had the sudden enlightenment that he was all and all was he. He lost the sense of I and his ego dropped away, similar to what happened to myself and similar to what happened to Buddha, just different scales upon the awakening.
One day you were walking on Park in Balham in South London, and you said something to God, "Show me your face."
Well, there was that intensity somewhere in me, and I was walking across the park, and although at the time I thought I was doing it, in fact there was a noticing that every footstep was uniquely different and never would be there again. That was all that came into me. I wasn't doing that. It was just an idea or a sense that everything was totally new and unique. And suddenly I wasn't there anymore. So there was Tony Parsons. And there was nothing. There was no Tony Parsons. There was nothing. No experience of it. There was no experience of it. There was just nothing. Bang. Right. Or absolute love, if you want. And then I walked out of the other side and I was still a seeker. I was still seeking. And what I now wanted was that.
You wanted to get back to that
I
feeling
wanted
as
to
a
get back to
seeker.
it, although I couldn't know it, I wanted to get back to that. So I then went on in various other ways to try and really, in a way, remember or grasp what couldn't be grasped.
Gardens and parks, we know from multiple sources across medical and science boards, has fantastic benefits on physical and mental health. Why is this? Are we returning to something that we've long lost, a call into nature? The most basic connection, which was our ancients' way of communicating, their connection with Mother Earth. The only way to do that now is to go to a park or a reserve or a nature place of some sort. What if God was the earth? What if God were trees? What if God was spirit? So it got me thinking, parks obviously hold great importance, but what were they before they were parks? So in my local area I had a little look around and I identified that a lot of the parks in my own local area used to be collieries, which were mines. So a lot of the parks were either mines, collieries, or they were parks at the time when the old maps were generated. And then some were reserves and works of some sort. Others seemed to be camps and ancient places of power of some sort also. When I was thinking along the lines in the UK that within, close proximity to every church, school, hospital, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 X amount of parks within a certain proximity. I was trying to take this onto a global scale and think, could this be true across the board? Obviously, a lot of places in the world would just have nature, pure nature, and that would be enough, let's say. But taking it to the scale across into America and to see if these parks could hold any power of such, I thought, let's look at a highly populated place such as New York or somewhere like that. So I looked at Manhattan and straight away on Google Earth, I saw Central Park. First of all, I was flabbergasted by the size of it. I just couldn't believe how big this thing is. This park, Central Park, would ultimately be enough of a park for the whole of the city. If you saw the size of it, it's huge. And I know there's obviously little smaller areas within the city, but this would be enough to power, so much. But ultimately, I had a little look what was there before, and you probably all know or all aware, it was the Seneca Village. The Seneca Village, which was, an all-African, all-black little civilization that was thriving. Landowners that were getting the rights to vote through land ownership and really thriving as a community until their land was stripped from them and Central Park was placed there. They were wrongly stripped of their land and hardly compensated. Another outcry really, Years later, there would be the Tulsa Massacre, where, you know, they called it the Black Wall Street, would ultimately be massacred. We see this throughout history. But then just referring back to Central Park and the whole idea of parks, the Seneca village was present where Central Park is today. So the ancients, if the Seneca people were potentially Moors or had any relevance to any understanding of the earth, would know that that place held power. That's why they built there, and that's why it was taken back off them. So, you know, we can look at the bigger parks in the world as well, the national parks. In the UK, you've got the Peak District, the Brecon National Park, you know, Snowdonia, America, Yellowstone, Rocky Mountains, just to name a few. But then going back to what I said about, you know, the parks potentially being arks, it would be more in relation to zoos. You know, we call them zoos, but the real names would be zoological parks or zoological gardens. Again, the parks or gardens are used. Why? And obviously, you find in all these places elements, well, in the zoos especially, elements of control on the animals where they're trying to reserve them for some purpose, just like in the nature reserves, which aren't touched, and they say they're holding that back for a later time. What was the term used? Retain for a later use. So it'll just be harvested at a later date. So I just found all this interesting. Then we know theme parks. We've got, you know, Alton Towers in the UK and Disneyland and things in America. And looking at the works of Michelle Gibson and John Levy, we already know that theme parks hold some significance of the past. A lot of the buildings were already present there. They've just added to them. They were built in swampy grounds. They all have these weird pools within them. They all have this weird but a similar layout. And obviously they're amusement parks. And an amuse, you know, when I looked up the term amuse, and amuse is one of the 9 muses of the world who are said to encapsulate people. So there's probably something there with amusement parks and the harnessing again, obviously relating back to sports circuits, etc. But parks hold something too, and play some significant role in it all. If you were to just look in your local area, see if this rings true to you. How far away are you from a park? You know, what's the distance? And then other parks that you know of, are they close to hospitals, to churches, to places of importance? You'd think it was common sense to build parks there, but there's more to it than them just being placed there for the ideal purpose of walking from church to the park. And when we refer this back to, you know, what movies might be telling us, we just look at the list of movies that are filmed in parks. You know, in E.T., the place where that was parked is literally called E.T. Park now because it's become so famous from it. Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Jurassic Park, Star Wars New Hope, Monty Python Holy Grail, Raiders of the Lost Ark, I like that one, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Indiana Jones The Last Crusade, National Treasure, Hunger Games, Shining, Planet of the Apes, Star Trek Last Frontier, The Thing, just to name a few. All filmed in parks. To conclude, all that I know is that parks, gardens, whatever you may call them, hold significant power, are in close proximity to all our major facilities, aid with enlightenment, healing, physical and mental, and seem to be enclosures and reserves for animals, plants, insects, linking them to the term ark. I found what I found, what can you see? Peace and love, people.
you think that you have a handle on what this is gonna be. Guns and tits and all that mindless shit that I usually enjoy. You have no idea. This place seduces everybody, eventually. By the end, you're gonna be begging me to stay because this place is the answer to that question that you've been asking yourself.
What question?
Who you really are. And I can't fucking wait to meet that guy. Bottoms up, cowboy.